Dear viewers, welcome to the show POWERchat, Nepal's only TV talk show in English discussing development since 2016. I take this opportunity to thank our esteemed viewers for appreciating this show throughout these years. Today onwards, we will reach out to you every Monday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. via YOHO TV SD and its social media platforms. Dear viewers, through this special episode tonight, we are discussing Nepal-Australia relations with particular focus on Australian government's development assistance to Nepal. And I'm joined today by His Excellency Peter Budd, Australian Ambassador to Nepal. Let's talk. Welcome to the show, Your Excellency.
Thanks, Laxman. Thank you very much for inviting me.
How have you been?
Well, COVID-19, I'm considering, pretty well, to be honest.
Well, I recall the day I invited you 3.5 years ago. You joined my show, and you were new by that time, but things have been changed throughout these years.
I know. I can't believe it's been 3.5 years.
You know, with the unprecedented impact of the global pandemic, COVID-19, to our lives, how have you been doing your works as the ambassador of Australia to Nepal?
Well, look, it's been a challenge, as it's been a challenge for all of us, just the new COVID-19 context. It's meant that we've had to change the way we do our business. There's whole areas of my work that's evaporated in terms of some of the public speaking engagements and that kind of thing, but we've had to pivot to the virtual realm. So a lot of engagement over social media, a lot of use of Zoom and WebEx in order to maintain those connections going forward. And it has required us to pivot some of what we're doing in our development program as well, just so that we can manage within the new COVID-19 environment.
Well, you celebrated the 60 years of Nepal-Australia relations, the diplomatic ties, just before the lockdown happened here in Nepal last February.
We were very lucky.
So how do you observe the relations between Australia and Nepal, your development priorities throughout the 60 years time period?
Yeah, look, I think after 60 years, our bilateral relationship is on a very sound footing. We were lucky enough to have Foreign Minister Guwali speak at our 60th anniversary event. And it allowed us to reflect on where we've come from. I mean, on the development side, obviously we've had some really enduring development programs. Community forestry is obviously one of those, and we still have a hand in that. Our micro enterprise development program, again, another 15-year program. And I think, the relationship has gone from strength to strength. We've, since the election in the federal and provincial and local government elections in 2017, we've also engaged in a subnational governance program, again to try and support Nepal's transition to federalism. Australia, we've had, what is it now, 119 years of federalism, and we're still trying to get it right. So we do appreciate the challenges of only 2 or 3 years in terms of just this new system of government of 760 odd separate governments. The challenges for them to deliver against their mandate for the Nepali people. But it's not all development program. I think we had our first bilateral talks in August 2018, and I recall then that what Nepal was looking for was not us, Australia, just as a development partner, but also other ways in which we could collaborate. We've both had seats on the Human Rights Council, for example. We're looking at ways that we can improve our political level engagement. I think There have been a number of very constructive telephone conversations between our respective foreign ministers, and I think there's a very warm relationship there. At some stage, I think there would be a welcoming of a ministerial visit. Obviously, in the COVID-19 context, that's not possible, but when we get through to the other side, which eventually we will, I think there is that opportunity for increased political level engagement. We have some Australian businesses that are looking quite encouragingly at the hydro sector to look at where we can support Nepal's development there. We've had a Nepali business consortium visit Australia and look at the potential of using Australian technical expertise to develop Nepal's horticulture sector. And most recently, as a result of COVID-19 too, we've had the inaugural flight by Nepal Airlines to Australia. In fact, they've conducted several flights to Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra. So I think we now have a proof of concept that direct flights with Nepal's national carrier is possible, and we are enormously thankful to both Nepal government, to Nepal authorities and Nepal Airlines for facilitating the return of more than 1,000 Australians to Australia during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, that is really insightful, Your Excellency. You worked hard sending back the Australian citizens from Nepal to Australia. Before I come on the Australian government's aid mechanism, I would like to ask you, as you are completing your tenure as the ambassador of Australia to Nepal in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So you were referring to your development assistance to the federal setup here in Nepal. You might have visited some places in Nepal.
Yeah.
Could you tell us your impression about the way development projects have been implemented here in Nepal with the support of Australian government?
Yeah, look, our development experience is probably a little bit different to a lot of other development partners. I mean, we're a modest donor and we recognise that. I think our entire program between our bilateral component and some of those global programs, including on water, health and sanitation, our support for water, energy, resources. So we've got a very small $20 million program spread. We're probably only contribute, as compared to other donors, probably 2, at the maximum 3% of the entire development budget coming in. So it means that we need to be really careful in terms of where we deliver our money. We have to be sure that we're filling a niche that is not already filled by another development partner. And we need to work to where we think our comparative advantage is, which is why we've looked at example, drawing on our experience on management of water, energy, agricultural resources, subnational governments in terms of federalism, drawing on our educational institutions and our university sector to deliver scholarships and our awards program. So I think now our experience has been generally very positive. We don't channel much money through Nepal government systems, although I'm sure that the Nepal government would like us to do so. But we choose proven partners that have a track record of service delivery, and we work very collaboratively. We work with the government in terms of the strategic direction of where the government wants to see the development dollar spent, and then we work with reliable partners to deliver it. So overall, my experience in terms of very niche programs, very sort of small scale programs, but largely effective.
Are you satisfied with the work of development stakeholders? You're referring to the fact that you take care of the track record of the service delivery partners here in Nepal.
Yeah, look, I think we all have very different experiences, and if you're looking at the the British or the US or the EU, much larger tranches of money and a lot more complexity and potentially many more challenges. So I think ultimately, all development partners want to spend their taxpayers' dollars wisely and to deliver against their projected outcomes from their development programs. So I think generally the motivations are all in the right place, and it's just building those constructive relationships with government and development partners to carry it through.
Well, Your Excellency, how is Australian government's aid is managed? Could you tell us about the Australian government's aid mechanism here, particularly here in Nepal?
Yeah, well, look, for us, there's a very high focus on sort of monitoring and evaluation. I've spoken already about the water, health and sanitation, about our subnational governance programs. We also have a Australian NGO cooperation program. So it's very important for us to ensure that we have those monitoring and evaluation processes, which are largely driven by our development and very effective development team here. And we also ensure that as part of that monitoring and evaluation, that there's a few basic tenets that are carried through. So gender equity, disability and social inclusion are key elements. We want to see women in leadership put in the forefront, and women to be not just the beneficiaries but the deliverers and enablers of our programs. So there are some basic consistent tenets that we seek to deliver through our development programs.
Your Excellency, is it true that Australian government has decreased its aid or assistance here in Nepal ever since the AusAid has been integrated into DFAT?
Look, I think a lot of partners' development programs have been under budgetary pressure, and I think after COVID-19 that pressure is only going to increase. Yes, there was a cut to Nepal's bilateral budget, but a lot of that was recaptured through access to some of our global programs, whether that be our, like I said, the Australian NGO cooperation program, water, health and sanitation, our business partnerships platform. So where you might lose some money on the bilateral side, the direct bilateral vote, we're still being quite successful due to the hard work of my development team to look at other avenues of funding through some of the global. But look, I think, development budgets, there's swings and roundabouts. There has been a focus by our government to look at our immediate region too in terms of the Pacific, and I think that's very defensible as well. But I think, there have been cuts across the board, or a reprioritisation, I should more say, to the development program to just ensure that what we're spending is effective and delivering where it's needed.
Well, Australian development assistance reached out to many areas here in Nepal, from forest to health, education to livestock and whatnot. Do you presume any shift in the areas of development here in Nepal due to the impact of COVID-19?
I think, well, I mean, we've had to pivot our programs where we can to support Nepal's response to COVID-19. It's certainly impacted on the way we deliver our operations. It certainly has tested the way that we do undertake our monitoring and evaluation, and how we do ensure the safety and security of those partners that we work with to deliver our programs. So I think, COVID-19 is certainly one element, but there's other areas in which we're working to collaborate with Nepal as well. I think climate change is a big one too. I mean, we saw at the beginning of the year the impact of the bushfires in Australia, and we acknowledge the messages of support that we receive from many of our Nepali friends, from the Nepali government. Nepal has had to suffer through recent floods as well. So I think climate change is an area where we can collaborate further. I mean, I've recently just handed over the chair of the International Support Group, ICIMOD. ICIMOD has been a wonderful partner with us for 8 or 9 years now. And with the Himalayan Assessment Report, I think there is real opportunities to get the issues of mountain people, those in the Himalaya region, some of those issues out there on the international agenda, and to get some regional cooperation. And I understand that on the 15th of October there will be a ministerial summit that will look at how you take that science and the threats to glaciers and to the mountains, and how you translate that into a call for action, so linking the science to the policy. And I understand too that your own Foreign Minister had been looking to deliver the Sagamata Samba dialogue, again focusing very much on climate change and the impact on mountains, that had been scheduled for April this year. That, like everything else, has been disrupted by COVID, but we do hope that next year, and leading into the COP26 that the UK will be hosting, that we can certainly get climate change and work together to get the mountains on that climate change agenda.
That really looks interesting to follow up on. There is often criticism that the resources within development assistance have not been properly utilized. At the beginning, you are saying that you highly focus upon the monitoring and evaluation. So are you happy with the ways Australian development assistance has been utilized here in Nepal? Do you see any room for improvement, especially that of the good governance crisis here in Nepal?
Yeah, look, I'm very comfortable in terms of the way our development assistance is being delivered. We've enjoyed strong cooperation from the Nepal government. As I said, we're not channeling money through the Nepal government per se, but we're working with institutions with whom Nepal government is also working. For example, the World Bank, and the money that we're providing to support just the public finance delivery. So look, again, I'm feeling very confident, and we constantly keep the government informed in terms of what we're doing and how we're tracking and how we're spending the money and what we're delivering with it. So I think that continued communication with the government, keeping them advised on how our assistance is tracking, how it's aligning with Nepal's own development priorities. So no, I have to say that I'm feeling very, very happy after 3.5 years of how things have
Any
gone.
specific recommendations for improving, again, the good governance part?
Well, look, again, we acknowledge that the governance part is important. That's why we're supporting a subnational governance program. In fact, we're looking at our second phase. This has been going for around 4 years now, so we're now looking at the next 4 years down the track. So I think, look, there are challenges for the Nepal government. I think the transition to federalism is a challenge, but ultimately I'm very optimistic, having, as you said, that opportunity to travel outside Kathmandu and to speak to local and provincial governments. Many of those political representatives are new political faces, but very service oriented. So I think there's real opportunities now for federalism and those local governments and provincial governments to actually deliver against the expectations of the Nepali people. And that's why, as part of our subnational governance program, we've instituted a survey of the Nepali people. Conveniently, that started just following the elections. So we've got this great sort of snapshot of that huge level of optimism and confidence that the new federalist structure could deliver for Nepalis. And we'll continue to do that survey every year so that we have this longitudinal study on the issues and the attitudes and how the expectations of Nepali people are being met going forward.
Well, what is specific areas that Nepal, need to focus upon in relations to effective implementation of federalism? Any experience or learning from the Australia?
Yeah, look, it's difficult to. Each federal system is a bit different. For example, Australia came from a number of different colonies or states, and were brought together under a federalist structure. Nepal has gone from a centralist structure to, so there are some slight differences, but I think that willingness to work together for a common goal, that common commitment to delivering for the Nepali people is really key, and just having that shared focus on where you want to take Nepal.
Well, do you have any recommendations for the development sector priority for next 5 or 10 years here in Nepal, through your experience staying here in Nepal about 3.5 years?
Yeah, look, I think perhaps one of the important elements too is it's not just a conversation about development, or not donor-driven development. I think the broader economic development piece is very important, and that's where the government of Nepal, all governments play a very important role in terms of how do you create an enabling environment that allows business and the private sector to carry a large part of that load in terms of job creation and economic activity. So I think that's the next piece. And for Australia, the main driver of our economic development is the private sector. And I know that very early on of the current government, there was that very positive narrative of wanting to work effectively with the private sector. And I think that is going to be very important going forward. What the government can do is provide those policy settings that encourage foreign direct investment, that provide those services, power, road infrastructure, to enable businesses to be effective and successful, and obviously too, within that, providing a strong grounding in terms of education so that you can build on on Nepal's proven human capital. I mean, with the number of Nepalis living in Australia, I mean, we've experienced firsthand just the entrepreneurship and the capacity of the Nepali people, and I have to say that Australia has been served very well by the Nepali diaspora.
Well, Your Excellency, you're sharing with us very interesting things, but we are coming to the end of the show. I have a final question for you. As you are leaving Nepal in a few weeks, what are you bringing back to Australia as a diplomat and as an individual, very quickly?
Very quickly, look, I'm taking back some very happy, fond memories. I'm taking back home with me a number of friendships, taking back with me experiences for my children, potential future connections. My son, for example, is doing animation at UTS in Sydney. He worked with Incessant Rain Studios here, and I hope that at some stage he'll be able to reconnect. So some lifetime experiences, some lifetime friendships. That's what I'm taking home.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Your Excellency. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Always a pleasure, Laxman. Thank you very much.
Dear audience, time now to wrap up the show. Keep watching us. See you next week. Namaste.